Most gardeners don't realize they're participating in a system that was never designed to help them succeed long term. They believe they are improving their soil. They believe they are feeding their plants. They believe they are being responsible caretakers of their garden. But in reality, they are renting fertility. Every season begins the same way. A trip to the garden center. Shelves stacked with brightly colored bottles promising explosive growth, miracle blooms, instant results. Bags of compost with brand names instead of ingredient lists. Fertilizers sold by the pound, the gallon, the promise. And every season ends the same way too. The soil looks tired. The plants demand more input. The cycle resets. This is not an accident. This is how the modern gardening economy is designed to function. Because soil that truly regenerates does not need to be fed forever. And a gardener who grows fertility is no longer a customer. Most people never escape this loop because they confuse feeding plants with building soil. These are not the same thing. Feeding plants is temporary, building soil is permanent. One creates dependency, the other creates momentum. When you pour synthetic nutrients onto the soil, you bypass biology. You skip the relationships between fungi, bacteria, roots, and minerals. Plants grow, yes, but the soil underneath them grows poorer. Living soil, by contrast, becomes richer the more it is used. And this is where the fork in the road appears. You can continue buying fertility every year, watching costs rise while results stagnate. Or you can install a system that produces fertility on-site, season after season, without permission, without invoices, without replacement. That system begins with one plant. Comfrey, not common comfrey, not seed-grown comfrey, but Bocking 14. This distinction matters, because Bocking 14 is not a weed. It is not invasive, it is not unpredictable. It is sterile, controllable, and extraordinarily productive. Once planted, it does not ask questions. It does not negotiate, it does not fail quietly. It simply produces biomass, minerals, and structure year after year. This is why comfrey is not just a plant. It is a piece of infrastructure, as essential as raised beds or irrigation lines. And to understand why, you have to stop thinking about fertilizer as a product and start thinking about fertility as a flow. Number 1, liquid fertility, rebuilt from first principles. Every fruiting plant follows the same biological demand curve. Nitrogen early for leaf growth, potassium later for flowers, fruit, and sugar transport, calcium and trace minerals throughout for structure and resilience. Commercial fertilizers attempt to simulate this with numbers on a label. Comfrey does it biologically. Its leaves store potassium at levels few plants can match. But more importantly, they store it in an organic form that is released gradually, buffered by biology instead of delivered as a chemical shock. When comfrey leaves are broken down anaerobically, they release a dense concentrate that mirrors plant demand rather than forcing it. This matters because plants fed gently grow differently. They build thicker cell walls. They resist pests. They produce fruit with depth instead of water weight. To make comfrey tea, you are not manufacturing fertilizer. You are extracting stored sunlight. The process is deliberately simple. No aeration pumps, no additives, no ratios beyond dilution. Cut the leaves before flowering. Pack them tight. Seal the container. Walk away. Time does the rest. When you open that container weeks later, the smell tells you something important. Life has transformed matter. What you are holding is not a supplement. It is decomposed plant tissue turned into plant-accessible nutrition. This liquid replaces bottled feeds permanently, not just because it works, but because it aligns with how plants evolved to be fed. Number 2, heat, speed, and microbial ignition. Compost fails for one reason: imbalance. Too much carbon, too little nitrogen, too little biology. Comfrey corrects all three at once. Its leaves decompose rapidly, releasing nitrogen precisely when microbes need it most. The pile heats, fungi spread. Carbon collapses into humus instead of lingering as debris. This is not acceleration, this is activation. A compost pile with comfrey behaves differently. It feels alive. It smells rich instead of sour. It finishes quickly, not because it was forced, but because it was fed correctly. When gardeners buy compost activators, they are trying to purchase what comfrey grows automatically. Once again, a product disappears. Number 3, surface feeding without theft. Most mulches protect soil but starve plants temporarily. Straw and wood chips consume nitrogen as they break down. Gardeners compensate by adding more fertilizer, deepening the dependency loop. Comfrey reverses this dynamic. When used as mulch, it feeds as it decomposes. Nitrogen flows into the soil instead of being stolen from it. Earthworms follow, fungal networks expand. Roots find nutrition inches from the surface. This is especially powerful because it turns harvesting into feeding. Every cut strengthens the system, every leaf becomes nourishment. There is no waste phase. This is the point where gardening stops being a series of tasks and starts becoming a closed loop. But the most important work of Comfrey happens where you cannot see it. Number 4, mineral extraction from deep thyme. Most vegetables are shallow rooted. They feed from the topsoil. When nutrients are depleted, gardeners replace them artificially. Comfrey does not accept that limitation. Its roots penetrate deep into subsoil layers untouched by annual crops. They reach mineral deposits laid down thousands of years ago. Potassium veins dot calcium seams. Iron deposits. These minerals are unavailable to most plants. Comfrey retrieves them anyway, then it lifts them into leaves where you harvest and redistribute them across the garden. This is not fertilization, it is redistribution of geological wealth. Your soil stops being limited by surface inputs and starts feeding from depth. Over time, deficiencies correct themselves. Structure improves, balance returns. This is why gardens with Comfrey age well. They do not exhaust themselves. Number 5, targeted fertility where it matters most. Potatoes do not need balanced fertilizer. They need potassium. General purpose feeds ignore this. Comfrey does not. When you line potato trenches with Comfrey leaves, you are placing nutrition exactly where tubers form. Not washed in from above, not diluted across the bed. Delivered slowly, underground, in contact with developing roots. This is precision without technology. Yields increase not because plants grow faster, but because stress disappears. Number 6, integration with animals. A system is only resilient when outputs feed multiple needs. Comfrey feeds soil, Comfrey feeds compost. Comfrey feeds crops, Comfrey feeds animals. This matters because livestock feed is one of the most expensive ongoing costs on a homestead. When chickens eat Comfrey, their eggs improve. When rabbits eat Comfrey, growth stabilizes. When leaves are dried, winter feed appears without purchase. One plant supports multiple trophic levels. This is ecological efficiency, not optimization. And finally, number 7, permanence. Annual solutions require annual effort. Perennial systems compound. Comfrey, once established, does not need replanting. It does not require protection. It does not demand fertility, it creates it. 10 plants can support an entire garden. 20 plants can support livestock and soil together, but only if planted correctly. Bocking 14 is sterile, this is non-negotiable. Seed-grown Comfrey spreads. Bocking 14 stays put. Root cuttings planted shallow, wide spacing. No harvesting the first year. Patience here unlocks decades of return. By year 3, the system stabilizes. By year 5, it becomes invisible. You stop thinking about fertility entirely. That is the goal. Not more effort, not better products, but fewer dependencies. This is why Comfrey is not a gardening trick. It is a declaration. A declaration that your soil will no longer be rented, that your fertility will no longer be outsourced, that your garden will not collapse when supply chains tighten. When you plant Comfrey, you are not planting hope. You are installing certainty. And systems like this, quiet, slow, inevitable, are how independence is built. And understand what that really means. Certainty is rare. In a world built on monthly purchases, subscriptions, and fragile logistics, certainty is almost radical. Most gardens fail not because of pests or weather, but because the gardener must keep buying belief in a bag. Every season begins with a receipt. Every failure sends them back to the store. Comfrey breaks that loop. Once it is in the ground, the conversation changes. You stop asking, what should I add? You start asking, what does the system already provide? That shift is subtle, but it rewires how you think about land, food, and time. You begin to see fertility as something that grows, not something you apply. You notice that your compost heats faster without effort, that your soil darkens year after year, that plants recover quicker after harvest, that yields stabilize instead of spiking and crashing. And slowly, almost without noticing, your garden stops behaving like a project. It starts behaving like an organism. This is where most people miss the point. They ask how much Comfrey to plant. They ask where to put it. They ask how often to cut it. But the real question is deeper. What role do you want fertility to play in your life? If fertility is something you manage, you will always be busy. If fertility is something you grow, you become free. A single Comfrey patch becomes a reference point. When something struggles, you don't panic, you cut leaves. When compost slows, you add biomass. When soil feels tired, you mulch and wait. The response is calm because the resource is constant. This is how resilience feels in practice. Not dramatic, not loud. Just steady, years pass. The Comfrey patch expands in thickness, not in spread. Roots deepen, yields increase. And the work required continues to decline. Eventually you stop counting cuttings. You stop measuring inputs, you stop tracking costs. Because the system no longer asks. And that is the final layer most people never reach. A system that does not demand attention to function. A system that continues whether you are busy, distracted, or exhausted. A system that forgives neglect because it was designed for time, not control. This is why Comfrey belongs near the center of a homestead, not the edges. It supports gardens, it supports animals. It supports soil, but most importantly, it supports the person maintaining the system. Because independence is not about doing more. It is about designing things that ask less of you as years go by. And when you stand in a garden like that, one fed by roots, cycles, and patience, you understand something most people never do. Freedom is not the absence of work. It is the presence of systems that work without you. That is what Comfrey installs. Not fertilizer, not yield, but continuity. And continuity is what carries a homestead through decades, not seasons. Continuity changes how you plan. You stop planning for weather. You stop planning for prices. You stop planning for perfect conditions. Instead, you plan for longevity. A garden built on purchased inputs reacts to disruption. A garden built on living fertility absorbs it. When drought comes, soil rich with organic matter holds water longer. When pests arrive, plants grown in mineral-balanced soil recover faster. When time disappears from your schedule, the system does not collapse. It pauses and then it resumes. This is the quiet advantage of perennial infrastructure. It bends instead of breaking. Comfrey teaches this lesson better than almost any other plant because it makes time visible. You can see it in the regrowth after cutting. You can feel it in the weight of leaves year after year. You can measure it in how little you intervene compared to how much you harvest. Most people chase productivity. They want faster results, bigger harvests, immediate feedback. But productivity without durability is just extraction with better branding. Comfrey operates on a different axis. It trades speed for permanence. It trades convenience for leverage. And leverage is what makes small systems powerful. A single plant replaces multiple purchases. A small patch replaces entire categories of inputs. A decision made once replaces decisions you would otherwise repeat every season for the rest of your life. That is compounding in its purest form. This is also why Comfrey feels boring to people who are still trapped in seasonal thinking. There is nothing flashy about it, no dramatic harvest day, no single moment of payoff. Instead, there is relief. The quiet relief of knowing something essential is handled. When fertility is handled, everything else simplifies. Crop rotations become forgiving, mistakes become recoverable. Experiments become safer. You can try new varieties without risking the whole system. You can push planting dates without fear. You can fail small and recover quickly. That freedom does not come from confidence. It comes from redundancy. Comfrey is redundancy made biological. And once you understand that, you stop asking how to grow it faster. You ask how to integrate it deeper. Near compost, near animals, near heavy feeders, near the places where mistakes are most expensive. Because the closer fertility lives to the point of use, the less energy the system wastes. This is the principle underneath everything. Energy saved becomes resilience gained. That is why industrial systems fail first. They move fertility thousands of miles. They concentrate it, they dilute responsibility. A Comfrey-fed garden does the opposite. It localizes fertility, it distributes function. It rewards attention but survives without it. And when systems are built this way, something unexpected happens. You stop feeling urgency. Urgency is a symptom of dependency. When nothing is secure, everything feels immediate. When the foundation is stable, time opens up. You garden slower, you harvest calmer. You plan further ahead. And eventually, the garden stops being the thing you worry about. It becomes the thing that steadies you. That is the real yield. Not leaves, not compost, not even food, but the removal of fragility from your daily life. And that is why plants like Comfrey matter more now than they ever have before. Because the future does not belong to the fastest systems. It belongs to the ones that can continue, quietly, reliably, without asking permission. That is how independence holds.